we have uh, Shri Surabhi Pandey ji. I am making Shri because yesterday when I said Srimati, people brought up the question of married, unmarried, whether married has to be called Srimati, Kumari and all that. The best solution is Shri. So let me call Shri Surabhi Pandey, votaries of Kartik Vrata in Vrindavan, rituals as creation of space.
ओम नमो नारायण नमः। राधे राधे, नमस्कार। मेरा नाम सुरभि पांडे है, मैं दिल्ली से हूँ। मेरी मातृभाषा हिंदी है और आज मैं यहाँ श्री रंगनाथ जी के आशीर्वाद और सानिध्य में अपने आप को बहुत ही भाग्यशाली महसूस कर रही हूँ कि आप सभी विद्वान जनों के सामने मैं ये शोध पत्र प्रस्तुत करने जा रही हूँ। आशा करती हूँ कि मेरी छोटी सी प्रस्तुति आप लोगों को ठीक लगे। So my presentation is on the votaries of Kartik Vrata, rituals as creation of space. Now Kartik Vrata is a very celebratory practice which is very prominent in the North India and in fact throughout India. And particularly if I speak about the topic, so it came through a chanced opportunity, I would say, that I was going through my field work in Vrindavan and I chanced upon a group of votaries who were observing this Kartik Vrata. So I happened to be in Vrindavan during the time of Kartik, and that's how this whole interest grew in the topic. And so the landscape of Braj, as we all know, it's legendary associations with the Lord Krishna. It draws and pilgrims from all over the world. But as we see that the heritage of the place sits marvelously on the traditions and the life of Krishna, and which is actually enacted and celebrated through festivals throughout the year. So these traditions again are entrusted in a way that these pilgrimage activities, such as during the auspicious time of Kartik, it displays a magnificent aware of cultures wherein people from all parts of world, especially during the Kartik Vrata, try to visit Vrindavan during that time. So the paper focuses on an ethnographic study which I conducted on the annual pilgrimage of the women devotees of Odisha to Vrindavan during the month of Kartik. And it is actually a way of contextualizing the practice of Tulsi Pujan through the incremental representation of rangolis or alpana, as we call, and the enactment of Leela performed during the month-long festivities. And the paper in a way is also trying to look into how the women forge connections while going through pilgrimage, and through ritual art and behavior they sort of try to encapsulate this tradition through all of these activities. And to me, this idea felt a liberating one because as a curious researcher myself, I found their activities to be highly liberating because these women chose to travel long distances, and some of them were coming from a very, very extremely rural background. And so the group that I focused on came from Ganjam district, and hence this study. So beginning with what exactly we identify as a Vrata. So a Vrata is a vow which performed for a deity for the fulfillment of certain desires, and Vrata have always been extremely important part of the traditional household. Almost every month of the Hindu calendar is marked by a series of Vrata or more, and they often involve rituals to be performed in a disciplined and arduous manner, and their performance is elaborate and at a certain time of the month. And so the goal in a way of a Vrata is not to detach the performer from the physical world, but in a way bringing him or her closer to Brahman or the ultimate reality. Rather, it's like a gain of blessings and a desired of worldly outcomes. So, if I specifically speak of we also find Puranic references for the for vows, and as P.V. Kane's celebrated work also, he mentions that in Puranas we almost find 25,000 and more verses central to the idea of Vrata, and they serve as a command or ordinances, religious moral practices and worships. So so we see that in a way we can say that there can be a lucid distinction on that the vratas can be identified that majority of them are prescribed to women, but there's a distinction in the sense that the vratas that are being performed to men are far more formal in nature and are within a Brahmanical order, or while the vratas that are being performed by women have tend to have a folk element in them, and which most often has been handed down through oral traditions and over generations in the families. And the latter kind, of course, ask for invocation of local deities for blessings and overall well-being of the family. So I'll just quickly skim through the slide that the cultural landscape of Braj, as I discussed, in the Mathura Mahatmya itself, it describes that the area around Mathura as a circle, that is a mandala having the shape of a lotus and a circumference of 20 yojanas. So, especially if I speak of the month of Kartik in Vrindavan, from the perspective of Mathura Mahatmya, Rup Goswami again says that mantra dravya vihinam cha vidhihinam cha pujanam manyate kartike devo mathurayam mad archanam, which means that worship offered during the month of Kartik in Mathura without proper mantras, proper ingredients or proper rules and regulations can be regarded as the worship of the Supreme himself. So in a way, we see that the practices that have been ongoing for years and a time immemorial, we find that why this connection of why having Tulasi Puja or Vrinda Puja in Vrindavan becomes important, because after all, Vrindavan literally means the forest of Vrinda, and Vrinda Devi is also considered as the Kula Devi of Vrinda, and there's a temple and dedicated to her in the Govind Dev temple also. So, a common going also says by Tulasi Tulana Atarva Tulasi, that is, nothing can equal the virtues of Tulsi as its meeting point of the heaven and earth. So, during the entire ritual, so it's a month-long ritual, so we see that there's a marked progression in the ritual. So, so we see that the Krishna is venerated in a marked progression, and from a small boy to an adulthood, and finally commencing with the marriage of Vishnu with Tulsi on the Shukla Paksha Ekadashi of the month. So we see that Tulasi Vivaha again is an important point, and again, just like any other votive observance, we see that the katha becomes important, and hence the story attached to the Kartik Vrata also is recited every day as part of the daily activities, and these kathas are again precise in nature and like a story and are recited, and in this case I happened to see that there was a priest who was reciting, and in their telling it displayed an element of regional folklore, and most often which was sort of perhaps spiced up with a pun by the storyteller also, and it invoked or sort of it reflected a structure which showcased that the purpose behind the performing of the vrata. So these kathas also appear in a didactic manner, and it implies an intention or sort of a instruction of the portrayal for pleasure and entertainment purposes also. However, they also convey a message which seemingly reflect with the idea of katha shravan, or providing a degree of merit to the listener just by listening to it. So we see that this again, devotees would gather early in the morning and would go around the city, and would most oftenly cover each temple which would fall in the place, and would light a small diya. Deepdan again is an important element of the practice. But again, my important portion, I mean, my own intervention comes with the sense that that the art or the ritual art which is being made during this time also signifies this progression in the ritual. So we see that during the early days of the Vrata, we see that the elements as the month progresses, it also changes, and similarly the folk songs that they sing are also sort of display this element. So the drawing of alpanas have been again seen as a way of decorative or representative practice, but however, in this sense, we can see that that it was organically fitted into the Vrata. So again, if I quote Dinah L.X. work, so she also says that such Hindu sacred images have to be understood within a context or a visual text, like a visual text, and so themselves they display a sacredness within a context, like an image used during the worship is considered as a sacred image during the ceremony. So you cannot merely just claim it as a representation, or it's just for the display or something which at the devotees whims and fancy. She's putting her heart into each of the rituals into it. So as I said, as the month progresses from the infancy of Krishna to adulthood, there's also a marked progression in the depiction of alpanas with time. So the initial depictions are mostly centered around the leelas, which are related to Krishna's childhood, like jhulan, toys, or depicting for Krishna's play leelas, and a notable feature can be seen that the presence of Lord Jagannatha along with Subhadra and Balaram, of course, which are seen constantly present even during the ever changing or the stages of the rituals. So these symbols again are associated with Radha, and also makes a presence for Leela. What becomes interesting in this depiction of changes or ritual progresses is that Kartik Puja ultimately aims for preparation of the impending marriage between Tulasi and Lord Vishnu. So Katha that are as told, they are also progressing in the way. So before the Tulasi Vivah ceremony, Lord Vishnu is depicted in mainly episodes of Leela from his boyhood. But once the marriage takes place, we see a shift of as the Alpana begin to takes a smaller form, and they become less ornate, and after the Tulsi Vivah, the deity is seen depicted as Radha Damodar, indicating the completion of marriage. And for the rest of the last week after the Kartik Shukla Paksha Ekadashi till Kartik Purnima, the deities prepare towards the completion of their final vow. So we see that the experiencing the rituals in a way, we see that the divine feminine in Vaishnav traditions have been nurtured along with these traditions. So an aspect which has been time and again challenged, or perhaps not been clearly understood by Western theologians also. So, because most often we see that these Western scholarship, they emphasize on the preference of worship into either being absolutely monotheistic or polytheistic. While in Vaishnava traditions, we find that the Supreme is described as having unlimited forms. So it's like an Ananta Rupa, since it is believed that the God has no limitations. So we see that that this is again, and my intervention with the topic again comes back with this whole divine feminine in the tradition, as once I started interacting with these ladies, I happened to know that the women performing these rituals identified themselves as gopis. So their role, as described to me, was either as a mother or as a lover or as a companion into the play of the Leela. So where they sang lullaby to the Lord, feeding him his choicest food, and slowly, once the tradition makes its progress towards Gopashtami, we see that the Lord becomes old enough to be heard the cows, and then they progress to sing love songs in a manner to prepare for his impending marriage. So similarly, we see that the idea of identifying themselves, just 5 minutes, yes. Okay, I'm just going to. So this idea of identifying themselves as gopis, they long to be with Krishna, and hence they remain uninterested in their own union with Krishna, but they derive pleasure from the union of Radha and Krishna. And by taking a role of a gopi, they intend to further get closer to achieve the Vaikuntha easily. So, since I'm being asked to conclude, I'll switch to the conclusion. Hindu traditions are again laden with complicated belief systems, and often they are projected in manifold processes, and they can't be just simply identified as having folk elements or Brahmanical models. However, within the links of Kartik Vrata, it could be seen that it incorporates several regional traditions, and within this context, because it was an ethnographic study, these women who traveled from Odisha to be during this time in Vrindavan, with them they brought their own culture, and resulting into a magnificent oeuvre of cultures. And women, as I saw through this study, played an important role in observing these vratas. Pilgrimage and performances of these rituals gave them a temporary space to reaffirm the traditions as per their standards. And the natures of these rituals allowed them to sing, dance, draw, and of course listen to the stories. And it made them, these rituals gave a way for them to be emotionally expressive, creative, and perspective of religious romance, perhaps. In the end, I'll quote Tracy Finchman's seminal work, where she says the Kartik Puja embraces imagery of Krishna's playful behavior as transgressive. Simultaneously, however, it implements such imagery with alternative imagery and reconfiguring Krishna traditions in ways that Sanskritic theologies may not emphasize, but that resonate with women's ideals and concerns. Thank you.
Any questions?
Visual presentation. I have one question which also comes from my own research. This sense of motherhood to the Lord and the bhava which is generated through these rituals, is it temporary during this particular Kartika month, or does it have a bearing on their day-to-day lives? Could you interact and could you get some sense out of your interactions?
So with the interactions that so I went around with them for almost 15 to 20 days, going around and disturbing them, and they being very gracious enough to allow me in their own ritual spaces. What I observed, and specifically I wanted to touch upon during the presentation, but I could not. Thanks that you have pointed it out, that there was this instance where I spoke to this lady, and she said, and I asked them, because we, as a scholars, we have this notion of having, set gender or caste roles in our minds. So I asked her whether are there caste distinctions between all of these ladies, because again I could not see while they were performing these rituals. So she said, yes, we belong from different castes, but here we all identify ourselves as gopis. But once we go back to our native areas, those hierarchies will be resumed. But I also felt in a manner, because I was constantly asking them these questions, and they also said this, that since it's a very celebratory practice, it's a very well-known practice, and perhaps some of us are already observing this. They also said that it's a daily, it's something which they look forward to in the entire year, and the rituals as such don't change. But perhaps because they were traveling, they choose to travel, and some of them who already knew that they will not be able to come back again. So this was something, a lifetime opportunity for them also.
Actually, partially you answered the question. This is primarily to do with the fact that, this happens in a specific time of the year, right? So there's a temporality associated with that. and also a speciality because they go to a particular place, entails movement, right? So this twin coordinates of space and time, right? It somewhat also impinges upon their identity, because there could be somebody amongst them could be traveling every year, right? The very fact that they visit Vrindavan at a particular time of the year, right? Does it have any bearing upon their life when they come back, right? Yeah, you partially answer when you say that, those caste distinctions are sort of reinforced. But apart from that, their identity as, a traveler for one particular month.
Or a brati.
Or a brati, yes, or a pilgrim.
Yes.
Right, so that's something that is ritualized. Even the very traveling, that pattern is ritualized. It's not only the ritual per se, but the very act is ritualized of, going, and yes, the movement is ritualized. So just want to sort of like a meta ritual kind of a thing. So can we look at it from that perspective?
I'm sure. I guess because when I spoke to one of the eldermost lady who was performing this ritual, she said that I've been looking forward to visit Vrindavan all throughout my life, and I don't know whether I'll be able to come back or not. Even the most poorest of the lot, I'm sorry if I'm using this word, the one who could not afford to take gifts around for the family to take back, they would just take the Braj with them.
Right.
So that to take, something from the land to give back to the people who are, in the family and friends. And she explained it to me that once they go back, they will of course go back and visit Lord Jagannath to complete the whole ritual. But also once they go back to their own native villages, they are celebrated as bratis, and people from families from far off places would come and touch their feet so that they are some similar to what Vardaji had touched on her paper.
And this may be entirely tangential, but with this breath, can we also connect the concept of seva somewhat?
Could be. I am yet to explore that aspect.
Breath and seva together. Can we just think about that? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you for
Yeah.
it.